Appreciate it. Appreciate being on.
Absolutely. Yeah, just super easy rundown here. And for anyone listening, this is a rundown for you too. This is conversations. And really the genesis of this started in 2020, thinking about we just need more conversations. Even in
Yeah.
2023 now, we need to have way more conversations regardless of our beliefs, our backgrounds. It just so happens to be a large portion of our audience is young leaders in the church, which
Mm.
obviously is so much fun and a passion point for myself. So I'm excited to just kind of learn a little bit about you, what you're doing right now, and maybe as if you and I were sitting at coffee. This is the hope, is if you and I are at coffee, we're just having a conversation. So maybe share a little bit of super easy rundown of who's Pastor Chris Durso.
Yeah. So first and foremost, man, thank you for having me on. I feel honored to be able to talk, hang out, and have a
Yeah.
conversation. Um, I am born and raised New York, born and raised in Queens, New York. I'll be celebrating 18 years of marriage to my
Let's go.
beautiful wife next month. I have two beautiful children, Dylan and Chloe. They are 16 and 13, and we live in New York. Currently, I get to serve as a teaching pastor for several churches around the country, which I'm here now for one of them in Colorado Springs for Zeal Church. So that is what I do
Beautiful.
for a good portion of my time. Um, I'm also the chaplain for the Brooklyn Nets. Um, I'm also starting a Bible study in Manhattan, Soho, Manhattan,
Yeah,
which is a wild
I
story.
saw
And
that.
that actually begins uh, not this Monday, the Monday after. And the response has been pretty amazing. I'm an author um, and potential podcaster. I got a couple of people. We're working out some stuff now. So that's
Let's
who I
go.
am. I'm just honored to be here.
Well,
Happy to be alive.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being on again. It's going to be so much fun, and thanks for sharing a little bit. So Pastor Brandon was actually on conversation. So it's a funny small circle.
Oh, great.
Pastor Brandon is incredible. He had so much fun insights and got to learn so much from him. So just kind of jumping right in, you've been in ministry for a long time, and again, the audience of this is leaders, not just in the church, but also in the
Yeah.
business space, because I kind of dabble in both of those as well. So what are you seeing right now in 2023 with leaders in the church, with maybe just leaders in general? Like, what are some observations as you travel around the world, even of seeing specific character traits, or maybe things where you're like, man, this is something that I really love, and this is maybe something where we're all growing together in this space?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I get to work with a lot of leaders too, across
Hmm.
the church world and outside of the church world. And sadly, the one thing I'm noticing post COVID is fear. A lot of
Hmm.
people seem to just be fearful of their future. It's almost like they're not sure what to believe in anymore. Everyone is obviously taking a new approach because what they're believing is what 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 they were doing before isn't going to get them through to what next. And I think that's true. And I also think it's not true. I think it's true that we have to be resourceful. I think we have to be creative. We have to be entrepreneurs in a lot of ways and pick up those mindsets. But at the same time, I think we should be relying on who we are and the gifts that we have. Um, but right, that's a really broad statement. Every week I'm blessed to be able to travel to a different city and meet
Hmm.
different pastors, different leaders, preach at different churches. And as I'm sitting with these pastors and leaders, mainly, they just seem to be a bit perplexed on how
Hmm.
to respond to life,
Yeah.
because pastors so often feel the need to have all the answers. And, if you're watching this right now and you feel like, man, I'm one of those pastors, I totally understand that pressure. 40 years old, I've been in ministry my whole adult life. I grew up in ministry, I grew up in a pastor's home. So I get it. But the one thing I would say to anyone watching is, man, I don't think you have to have it all figured out. I actually don't think you have to know everything that's about to happen. I just think you got to be prepared for today. I am big on preparation and planning for the future, but I think what we when we're living in a perpetual state of having to look forward and plan, I just think we miss out on the moment. And I
Hmm.
think we got to be okay with rolling with the punches and
Yeah.
being okay with, what I'm doing now, I may not do forever.
Mhm.
I was leading a church, and from leading that church with everything that was going on, just in my world with the transition of my parents stepping out and then wanting to step back in, and us just going, okay, we're not gonna continue on then, we're gonna bow out and we're gonna just keep on going. Like that was a pivot for us to go,
Mhm.
man, I thought we were gonna be doing this forever. And
Right.
it was a great lesson to go, hey, there's a strong possibility that you won't. Other than
Mhm.
Jesus, my wife, and my children, those are my three forever commitments.
Mhm.
But I'm never gonna say I'm fully committed to a city or a position because I've just learned that could all change.
Yeah, that's so good. Do you feel like you've seen maybe people, because I've heard this and it kind of is, I don't want to use the word trigger, but just an initial thought of even when someone says that though, of like, bro, I'm with you for life, or pastor, I'm gonna
Oof.
follow you for life. Do you feel like that's a red flag or something that you've seen where you're like, man, that
Yeah,
don't say that.
Yeah, I think any young leader watching me, I think, or any leader, man, that says that, I think their
Hmm.
heart is in the right place, right? So I
Yeah.
love that. I appreciate that, but I would just encourage to take that language and grow it out. I
Hmm.
wouldn't commit to any church pastor for life. I just think that it has been overstated. I think we've the
Hmm.
same way we've picked up trends from other people on how to dress. I think we've picked up language from
Hmm.
pastors that we've listened to and people that we've looked up to, and they've used this beautiful language to describe honor, right? If you're a part of the church world, especially the non-denominational charismatic church world, man, it's honor, honor, honor. And I think we
Yep.
create this false sense of honor, and we
Hmm.
misappropriate honor. We honor God ultimately, and if He
Hmm.
calls me to this place, I'm gonna be here, and every day that I'm called, I'm gonna be there heart and soul, right? That's some of that language, by the way. I'll be here heart and soul, and I think that's beautiful language. I just think when we put a forever on it, we set ourselves up for a whole lot of expectation, and we don't even
Hmm.
realize what's down the road or what's to come.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We actually did a whole episode called Honor Overdose, and is this idea,
That's a
I
great
think it
name.
was I think it was John Piper or somebody kind of in that or space of talking about honor is medicine, and just like medicine, if you take too much of it,
Ooh,
it
that's
truly
great.
can be an overdose. So, it, kind of flipping the coin though for the seasoned leaders, those exec leaders, those lead pastors listening to this, how do we steward people in our churches and having the hand open kind of mindset with our audience or with our leaders?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. I mean, you just nailed it. It's living with an open hand. Anything that's good, it comes from God.
Hmm.
Anything that God decides to take that is good and moves it along, that's also part of God's plan. So
Hmm.
if it's in my hand, I want to do my best with it. If He takes it out of my hand, then I don't want to hold on to it. That's this
Hmm.
beautiful idea of living with an open hand. And I think that the difference between the Christian leaders that are leading churches. So I know we have Christian leaders across the board, entertainment,
Right.
law, medicine. But when it comes to leading churches specifically, we have to take this approach of a kingdom mindset that we are building the king's kingdom. We're not building
Right.
our kingdoms, right? We've heard it said that there are people that build God's kingdom and then other people that want to build their own castles. And,
Mhm.
pastors are never called to build castles. We're only called to build the kingdom. And the way the kingdom works is you have leaders that will pour into other leaders, and then those leaders continue to pour into other leaders. I think another word to switch out here as opposed to leader would be disciple. The
Mhm.
exact word picture of a disciple is literally a student teacher, a student
Mhm.
teacher. And the word picture is I'm learning and then I'm giving. I'm learning and then I'm giving. I'm learning something new. I'm teaching the new that I've learned. And it's this idea that it doesn't just stay with me or remain with me, but it flows through me. We see this
Mhm.
beautiful example. Paul goes and picks up Timothy, right? And then it becomes the start of the building of the church. But then he sends out Timothy, and then Timothy establishes churches all over. Timothy only stood with him, but for so long. And
Mhm.
I think that we have to be big enough leaders as
Yeah.
kingdom individuals to look at it that way. In fact, it stifles the kingdom when we try to hold on to people because there are people that are called seasonally to certain places that should serve those places with all their heart and be a part of it, get dirty, it's messy, it's time consuming, right? It's all those things. But when their time
Mhm.
is up, man, let's let them go and
Yeah.
bless them
Celebrate 'em.
and not make
Yeah,
them feel awkward and not make them feel guilty because
for
here's the
sure.
truth, if God's calling that person out, that's another region, another place, even if it's across the street, by the way, God's gonna
Mhm.
use them in a great and mighty way, and then he's also then gonna provide for another person to come on in. I
Yeah.
just think if we're creatures of habits, that's a difficult mindset to wrap your head around, and I gotta be honest, I'm a creature of habit. I
Mhm.
can be pretty boring. I like doing the same things.
Same.
I like talking to the same people, right? Like,
Mhm.
I have my normal flow, and I enjoy it. I enjoy waking up early in the morning, getting my coffee, walking my dog, reading my Bible, spending time in prayer, worship, getting my kids ready for school, driving them to school, picking up a coffee, coming back home, going on a walk with my wife, run some errands, then as the day winds down, we get dinner ready, watch some television, eat a yogurt with granola, go to
Let's
bed.
go.
Like that sounds like that's a dream for me. That's my favorite thing in the world.
Right.
Um, right there. So but
Yeah.
when anything messes with the schedule or the
Mhm.
program, we get ruffled by it. And I just think we have to be the kind of leaders that go, "Hey, every leader that is called to be a part of what we're building can and may also be called out."
Mhm.
And I think that everyone wants to be the exception. No, no, I found my forever. Man, no one
Right.
was forever. Jesus
No.
wasn't forever, by the way. He came and he was on earth for 33 years and he did ministry for 3 years and he was with his disciples and then after he left them and then they dispersed. I mean, this is exactly what the Bible is teaching us all the way through, but I
Mhm.
think a lot of times we miss those stories or we miss the moments that are actually transpiring because we want to be those that man find our, we're one and done. We got our crew, we're doing it forever.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I
And
mean,
by the
it's so
way,
good.
I think the heart of the pastor is beautiful, by the way, because, you
Mhm.
found someone you could trust, and it's not always easy to trust. Uh,
Right.
and trust,
Yeah.
man, people, they be people, you know?
Right.
People do
Oh,
people things,
yeah.
and I'm a person, I do people things, so I'm not saying it like
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Same.
better, I just think all of us across the board are people at the end of the
Mhm.
day. One of my favorite quotes,
Yeah.
it says, "The best of men are men at best." Come on, how
Mhm.
good is that? The
So
best of
good.
men are men at best. They're human, they're not
So
perfect.
good.
So anyone you
No.
you work with or link up with, it's just a man, it's just a woman.
Yeah, and just making sure we have clear expectations. We're not letting people down, and
Right.
I love that. And you even mentioned something that I think I've asked. I think this is the 57th episode of Conversations. Every time we've asked this, you said you have a routine and you're pretty structured. I would assume, obviously, you travel so much. How do you
Yep.
keep a structure? Because my wife and I, like, we just went to London for a week and came back, and I'm like, how in the world? Just like
Yeah.
next day you're going in the grind back in the work stuff and church stuff. So for you,
Yeah.
what does that look like, and how over the years have you learned to kind of make sure you're good to go?
Yeah, I think I definitely learned the hard way.
Mhm.
Um, I'm 40 now. I've had the privilege to be
Mhm.
traveling as a preacher since the age of 23. And just I've been traveling since, and then especially in this season, I travel full time, where before where I was pastoring.
Right.
And I think that if you do not create a rhythm or a structure, you will do things with a good heart, but you won't end up in the right headspace. Right? A good heart doesn't mean a right head. That I have to make sure that I am doing things to make sure that I'm resting. I need to make sure that I'm doing things that I'm spending time with my family. So often, I get the beautiful privilege, let's say, speak at a church or an event, and they want you to be a part of the whole event because they're excited. And I'm excited for the event as well. But if I'm going to events weekly, I can't stay for the whole event. If it works out that way, okay, but honestly, I man, 99.9 times out of 100,
Yeah.
I am in and I'm out. And that's not
Mhm.
because I think anything of myself. It's just because I have a routine that I have to stick
Mhm.
to and I have to keep. Jet lag is a real thing. Um,
Oh yeah.
Rest is a real thing.
Mhm.
spending time with my wife who, listen, we dated 5 years before we even got married, so we've been together way
Let's
longer
go.
than we've been out, but I never get so
Mhm.
used to it that I'm just
Mhm.
thinking, "Well, she'll be okay with it." Now, when I was a young leader, I thought that way in the sense of, "Ooh, I got this opportunity," right? That's another trigger word. I got this opportunity
Oh,
and God's
yeah.
gonna use me, and he does use you, but what he wants more than you're preaching a stage is how you're handling off the stage, and that could sound a bit cliche, but
Mhm.
how I'm handling my home, how I'm handling my marriage, how I'm handling my children. My son
Right.
is 16, he'll be out of the house in 2 years. So, I'm trying to get as much time with him as possible before I kick him out. No,
Oh, let's go.
before he goes away to college.
Right.
Um but, I think that structure is really important,
Mm.
and, for the most part, most people understand that. Honestly, it's not even a conversation that I don't think, we have, or if we do, they're not having it with me. I think for the most part,
Mhm.
people are really respectful of time, but, yeah, I think
Yeah.
you have to be diligent on it, you know? Because listen, when I'm traveling,
Yeah,
it's
no,
not vacation,
for
it's
sure.
work. So,
Mhm.
I gotta get to bed early. I gotta make sure that,
Mhm.
I even have my routine in a hotel and what I'm doing and who I travel with, and I travel with the same person every week. His name is Al.
Mhm.
Al's been traveling with me for over a decade, and the reason why
Wow.
I he comes with me is because he's committed for this season, to be with me and to help me as I
Mhm.
travel, and we both look at it as, "Man, this is ministry." So, we got work to do. We're not lollygagging, we're not hanging out, we're not going out for coffees or, anything extra.
Right.
If we
It's
can, we will, but
Mhm. No, I mean,
Mm.
and one, I respect it so much for the setting the boundary. My wife and I have had the privilege of being a part of conferences and all that type of stuff, and you always you feel the need to be a part of everything. And again,
Right.
we're kind of newer into that space and the expectation, but also being able to just say like setting the boundary of man, I'm exhausted. We just did a panel, or and
Yeah.
obviously you just kind of need your time to refresh and all that. So I love that, and also your kids are incredible. I follow you on Instagram. I've seen kind of
Uh-huh.
watched over the years them growing up, and your
Man,
your
thank
son's
you.
got a pretty good sneaker collection. I'm gonna be honest. We don't need to
Yeah.
get into sneakers today, but it's pretty dope. Uh,
We
he's a
could, I
stud.
don't
I
mind. I
love
mean,
it.
I grew up collecting I grew up collecting since I was maybe 11. Um, and it's
New
funny
York, man.
because when I got married, I actually sold 100 pair of sneakers, and it paid for my wedding.
Wow,
And not to date
great.
myself here, but that was before, like, the whole reselling thing. So
Right.
sneakers, it's a big part of New York culture, but it's also just been
Oh
something
yeah.
that I've loved, and yeah, I got Dylan onto sneakers early on where now he's far surpassed me, and he'll trade and he'll
So
flip
cool.
and he loves it. Yes, it's the best, man.
Hus New York hustler. Let's go. I love it. Well, even last couple questions here. Again, I've really enjoyed our time together. For you, like we talked, you mentioned that you've been married for quite some time. I've been married for 2.5 years. So I'm 2.5 years in. What recommendation or advice would you give? So we just moved 7 months ago across the country to be a part of a new church, new season, new life, all that. And again, you can kind of backdate it. So we dated in 2019, 2020 we got engaged. 2021, we got married. So we've yet to have a normal life in the past 3 years, as anyone else has. But like, talk to the young married couples. Like, what should we avoid? What should we do?
Yeah, I think, I think that what's normal, right? Like, normal is wherever you are with your
Right.
spouse, and you're figuring it out,
Mhm.
um, as you go. I think the best advice that I could give, um, is to continue to fall in love every day.
Mhm.
And I know that sounds cliche, I get it. But men, specifically men, because women, they seem to understand the concept typically a lot more than men. Men, we think because we are people that like to accomplish, we think because we propose, we get the ring, we say I do, we now
Mhm.
bring in money, we now think we're good. We should be floating on air to our spouses. Our wives should be so madly in love with us because look at what we've done. And I've learned that young married men will think, I gotta go hang out with the boys and, I'm still playing video games, and I'm not knocking anyone playing video games. I mean, it's just this
Right.
idea of if you are successful in your field, that's gonna take a good amount of time in order to be
Mhm.
successful. So then what are you doing with the other time that you have? For me and my wife, man, I have learned over the years, and she's learned over the years, that we need to process with one another, and we need to communicate one another. And the truth is, because she's my best friend, I'd rather hang out
Mhm.
with her than anybody else. You know,
Right.
I'd rather hang out with her than an opportunity. You know, I remember being a young youth pastor, and I live in New York, so there's always different people
Mhm.
showing up to New York, whether preaching somewhere or vacation or, they're putting on a concert, and people would reach out, "Hey, man, let's get dinner." And it seems like a one-off thing, but it would happen so often that it was taking away from our time because we made the decision early on that we were gonna raise our children and nobody else. So we don't have
Yeah.
other people helping us raise our children. They're great people in our lives, but somebody was always going to be home with our children. So my wife doesn't travel with me for the most part because we have children. And which is funny in the whole preacher world because, there was an era, especially 90s, early 2000s, I'm really dating myself here, where like, the pastor and the pastor's wife, they went everywhere together, especially for
Right.
itinerant ministry or evangelists. And for us, we just made the decision early on that family was going to be number one. And I think that when you have that type of mindset, you are then saying, I'm going to invest everything I have into this marriage, into this relationship.
Mhm.
And that's not just a big statement, because I think people are great at making big statements and big speeches, right? But it's like a
Right.
decision that you make every day. I'm gonna serve my wife and she's gonna serve me. And it's not I'm the man of God, so I'm served. No, it's I'm the husband that's submitted to God. Therefore, I'm gonna serve my bride because
Mhm.
that's what we're called to do. The same way Jesus serves us, we're supposed to serve one another. So I serve my wife and I serve
Mhm.
my children and I want to serve those that I'm doing ministry with. And it works vice versa. But especially in marriage, if your wife isn't funnest, most important, most beautiful, most enjoyable person in your life, there's a there's a strong possibility it's not that she changed, it's that you maybe have been investing too little.
Yeah. It's so good. It's convicting. I hope everyone listening to this is, like, getting a reservation for a date night,
Yeah,
based on this
get
podcast.
date night, man, get
Let's
gifts,
go.
don't ever stop getting flowers, and,
Yeah.
you know, clean the house, don't just expect her to
Right.
do I'm a horrible cook, I mean, so there are certain things that I don't make, very few things that I do make, my
Right.
wife's a phenomenal cook, but I try to make breakfast,
Same.
I try to make a sandwich, like,
Yeah.
just something to serve because
Right.
all of that is what we do, and do it without announcing it. Like, I would be the
Right.
guy early on, like, especially in the early days of social media, like, posting on Facebook, just cleaned up the house." Like, it's so dumb, like, why do we need to announce those
Right.
things?
We
Like,
need a
men
yeah.
oftentimes could be, like, just toddlers, like, looking for badges of honor because they
Right.
completed a task. Like, "I did it, look at
Right.
me." It's like, "Bro, you're supposed to do that."
Bro, you did the bare minimum. Let's go. No.
Yeah,
Alright, so
yeah.
last question, you mentioned something that I would love to hear your thoughts on. You said the word opportunity, and, I believe every generation in the church space, like, there's a natural inclination to kinda not chase it, but some people kinda do chase it in a way, or they have big ambitions for that. They're like, "Man, I wanna travel and preach. I wanna do what Pastor Chris Durso does. I wanna do" like, and again, the heart is probably pure. And again, we can't, like, I don't know.
Yeah, let's
But
say it's pure,
how do
let's give them
we
the benefit of the doubt.
right, absolutely. So how do we sift through that, and how do we steward that for the person listening this? Because obviously ambitions are great, but how do we steward that and know, and on the other side of it, how do we stay connected to our local church and submitted? Those are the two things that I'm interested to hear your thoughts on, and then we'll be done.
Man, I love this conversation. So you might have said it was the last question, but you're probably gonna have me going for a little bit here because
Oh,
it's
I'm
this right
down.
here. If you steward what you have,
Mhm.
you never reach a place where you've stewarded it enough. All right, so you have a gift, you have a talent. Whatever that talent is, you've never arrived. I'm a preacher. I don't think that I have perfected preaching. I think I have a lot of work to do. I think that I need to to make sure that I am challenging myself and reading different books and trying different approaches when I'm sermonizing. And I need to listen back to my sermons, and I need to know that it wasn't the best. And now this is completely outside of, man, when God moves and God does something great in a service, man, amen. But that was God's doing. So God is going to
Mhm.
do what God does. And I can't do what God does. I could only be responsible for what I'm expected to do, which is communicate the word of God. I want to make sure that I'm communicating it as clearly and as precise as possible. I don't mean to be offensive, but I think a lot of people think that they're good enough. And now they're
Right.
frustrated that
Yeah.
people aren't booking them or bringing them in. The Bible says your gift makes room for you.
Mhm.
And if your gift is not making room for you, then there's a possibility that you have not stewarded your gift enough. I'll also say
Mhm.
it's not everyone's grace to travel. It's not everyone's grace to be an itinerant preacher or an author or whatever it is may be. And I know that it could sound probably easy for me to say, but let me let you in on a little bit of a secret here, okay? I love being home. I do not
Yeah.
love traveling. I don't
Well,
I will speak to guys who are just starting out talking about, "I'm gonna travel full time," and I look at them and with so much respect, like, how do you have enough faith to believe it's just gonna happen? Now,
right.
I've seen God do it for me, but it's not like there isn't a moment where it's scary or is my calendar gonna be full because this is how I feed my family, like, all of those human emotions that I don't think we admit enough, I'm all
Mhm.
about putting it on the chopping block and talking about it because I think that I think that these are good, healthy conversations for people to hear, it just humanizes
Mhm.
it. But
Right.
going back to the point, when your gift makes room for you, it's gonna make room for you. It says that it'll bring you into the company of great men and great women. If it's not, I would say keep stewarding your gift. And let me also say, if it is bringing you into the company of great men and women, great. Keep stewarding your gift. Keep perfecting it. Keep
Mhm.
challenging yourself. I don't ever just think, yeah, I got it. I'm just gonna go up there. I'm gonna preach. It's gonna go great because I mean, I don't know anyone that's great at what they do that thinks like that.
Mhm.
I know a
No.
lot of people that are frustrated that they're not moving the way that they want to, and they think they're good enough. Well, my friend, that's
Mhm.
called entitlement. That
Mhm.
says I should have these things because I am already great. And I just know that in this world, the people that are operating at a high caliber, none of the people I know, and I could say with a clear conscience, none of them operate that way. No, I don't care what
Mhm.
you think by seeing social media, none of it. And none of them made it happen. Somebody may
Mhm.
be able to make something happen, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that God is going to breathe on it and allow it to continually happen. You know what I always
Mhm.
say? I always say that I wish that every leader, every preacher, let's just talk about preaching for a second, got
Yep.
the biggest opportunity that they thought was there. So whatever they thought the biggest stage was, I pray that
Mhm.
they get it.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen is they're going to realize that just because they had a
Mhm.
moment does not transpire to a lifetime. This idea of going viral is very misleading because what it
Right.
suggests is if I get one clip to go viral, now my whole life is going to change. Man, that's just not true. There are so many people that have gone viral that you've never heard of again. You
Yeah.
might remember them if you see a video, but if we're talking about sustainability and success, man, that's God's doing.
Mhm. Well, yeah,
It's just
think about it. You got one-hit wonders in the '60s, '70s, and '80s, like rock
sure.
bands that came out with one song, and that
My
was it.
goodness.
And we don't wanna be those people. We don't wanna be stewards, and yeah, no, 100%. I love it. And even kinda wrapping this up, maybe speak the last thought. What is the one thing that you've been chewing on? Maybe something you've been processing even as you're traveling and sitting with Jesus, like, what is the one thought or one recommendation you wanna submit to this audience?
Yeah, the verse I've actually been studying First Kings and Matthew simultaneously, and I've just been looking at the life of Elijah. And the life of Elijah is it's so interesting, right? Because he's this incredible man of God. He's this prophet. We don't get a lot about him, but we get a whole lot about him. Meaning
Mhm.
we get these stories, and these stories are so meaty, but we don't get to like follow his entire life and ministry. And really the main interaction we get is between him and Ahab and Jezebel and the impact that Jezebel's words make on his life. And he has this moment of just self-righteousness
Mhm.
where after he wants to die and the angel feeds him and the angel says, "Get up and eat." And then he gets up, he eats, he goes back to sleep. And then the angel comes back and feeds him again. And then he travels 40 days, right? And 40 nights. And he ends up on the mountain. And God says, "What are you doing here?" And he gives this big old speech. And what does he say? He says, "I'm the only one. I'm the only one. I'm the only one that wants to live for God. I'm the only one that wants to serve God. I'm the only one." And when he's saying that, he's saying as if there's no one else. It's just not true. The Bible lets us know that God continues says, "Look, I got 7,000 that have not bowed their knees to Baal and have not kissed Baal." Are you kidding me? You're not the only one. Who you
Mhm.
are, who you are is a man just like all the other men and all the other women. You're not the only one. And I've been paying attention to that spirit because there's a spirit of self-righteousness that leaders have, where they think
Mm.
they're the only ones doing great things for God. You're not the only one doing there's a lot of great people doing a lot of great things for God. There's a lot of people that haven't bowed. But you know where you're not the
Mhm.
only one? You're not the only one that's felt sad. Elijah,
Mm.
you're not the only one that's felt depressed. There are so many great men of God that we could list off, whether it was Job or Moses, that has had moments of being overwhelmed, Gideon, and just wanting to give up. You're not the only one, which also tells me that whether you have the title of prophet, preacher, warrior, you're still going to struggle with some things. And I've just been really focusing on the humanity of these great men of God because that was a lie he told himself. So much
Mhm.
so that when standing in the presence of Almighty God, he told God the same lie. He fed himself a lie. "I'm the only one, God. What are you gonna do?" And God's like, "Bro, what do you mean?
Right.
You're not the only one."
You're not
And
the only one.
and look at the response, by the way, to help him get better. Rest, which the leaders hate to do.
Yep.
A word, get up, just stand up, which speaks to salvation and being filled with the Holy Spirit.
Mhm.
And here it is, eat.
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 Yeah.
Just rest and eat. I think
Right.
leaders would do a lot better if they rested more, they received words more, and they ate more. There's this
Yeah.
beautiful verse in Ecclesiastes that says, it says to eat and drink and have a good time. It's what Ecclesiastes
Mm.
says. It says, eat, drink, have a good time. It's what God gives us because of how difficult life is. Now I'm paraphrasing, but that's what it says. How
Yeah.
beautiful is that? It's
It's
it's what
beautiful.
God gives us because of how difficult life could be.
Mhm.
It's absolutely amazing. It's absolutely amazing that that God would tell us, "Man, learn how to enjoy yourself." Hey, and enjoying yourself isn't getting more preaching gigs, which
Let's
I hate
go.
that word gig, by the way. It's not more
Gigs.
conferences. Hey,
Right.
just rest. Which, by the way, Robert
Yeah.
Morris so beautifully points out that the Sabbath is honoring the Sabbath is one of the commandments. And yet all the other commandments
Mhm.
we would say we would never break, right? We would never commit adultery,
Right.
we would never murder, we would never steal. And he says, and yet in that same grouping is honor the Sabbath, and yet we break that all the time because
Oh,
we
yeah.
we don't even see the value in rest.
Mm.
Man, if I could talk to a leader right now, learn how to pick a rhythm,
Yep.
have a structure, learn how to rest. I think that life would go better if you took a nap. I think life
Mhm.
would go better if you stopped striving. I think it would go better if you just got up and stood in who you are and not try to be anyone else. Don't try to emulate someone else so much so that you're now thinking it's you versus them, right? Like you're watching someone on social media that you've never met and you're thinking they're your
Right.
competition. You've all been there. We've all done that. So now get up
Oh,
and
yeah.
be you and eat. Eat the word
Take
of God.
Yeah. Go to
Enjoy
Chipotle.
yourself. Go to Chipotle, man. Get the extra guac. Pay the extra money.
Let's go.
It's
That's so good. Well, such brilliant insight and wisdom from you. I appreciate you so much for getting on
Josh,
and
thank
having a
you, man.
conversation. I hope that we'd have another conversation someday. And if you're ever in Southern California, let's go. Love it so
Let's
much.
go.
I do have a New York Yankee tattoo, and I tried my best not to show you because I do know you're a Mets fan. Didn't want our relationship to start off in a rocky place.
Hey, let me just tell you another secret. I'm a New York fan. The
Yeah.
only thing when it comes to basketball is I'm a Brooklyn Nets
Hmm.
fan because
Yep.
I'm chaplain for the Nets. So other than that, I'm Yankees, I'm Mets, I'm whoever. I'd wear that hat. I think that hat is awesome, by the way. It looks great on you.
Thanks.
Um, so I'd wear any hat.
Let's go. Well, again, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Yes, sir.
Boom, we did it. Thanks for being on.